Time for another edition of the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. With you, as always, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com, Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. Talking about the best supporting cast for quarterbacks. We're going to rank them. Who are the quarterbacks that have the most around them? Different criteria are there. What weapons do they have? Running backs, offensive line. Does the play caller count? The head coach. What about the defense? We were kind of left to our own devices here on how to come up with this. We're figuring out best supporting cast for the quarterbacks in the NFL. Where do the Chiefs fit into it? We talk about it right now here on the Red, Gold, and Bold.
You are listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is a columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it as we are off and running. One of the things, guys, we always like to do when we go through these little exercises. What did we learn, Jeff? Putting together the best supporting cast. What did you take away from it?
It's a lot tougher to pick the supporting cast than it is to pick the quarterback. And so for me, that was the big challenge here. Some names on this list that will probably surprise some people or some teams, I guess. Ultimately, some of the biggest name guys for me, I'll probably be releasing some information here, aren't on this list because of what they've done for their team, not because of who they have around him. So my supporting cast might surprise some people.
Okay. All right. Sam, what was your takeaway?
Good. Well, my takeaway now is I'm looking forward to Jeff's list. We talk a lot about the quarterbacks, and I think when all of us rank our quarterback tiers, there's not a direct correlation between wins and losses, or good teams, I should say, and quarterback tiers, but there's a pretty healthy relationship there. And to me, this exercise was enjoyable to actually see, okay, this quarterback's good, but why? And that's what I think this exercise prompted us to do, is to study the why a quarterback could succeed and why some of them it's a little bit more of a difficult assignment.
Yeah, I would agree. I thought it was interesting. One, it's a great refresher on who's coming and going, right? Like what changed. I mean, it's a great crash course in what are these teams now? Like, oh, yeah, new offensive coordinator there. Oh, yeah, some of the different things that are there. So I do think, like I don't buy preview magazines. Like when I was a kid, I couldn't wait for the preview magazine and to read through, and it was a reminder of who was on what teams. Now they don't have those because everything's available on some site. But when you had the magazine, you would thumb through it all, right? On the side, it's like when someone asks me, I'll go look at it.
You're making the printed newspaper argument here.
I'm a big fan of the printed newspaper.
So am I.
So I 100% have your back on that. I thought it was interesting. It kind of made me feel like a kid again, going back and going through, the rosters and who all had changed. And, I don't know that I was memorizing everyone's height and weight this time around, but yeah, it was a little trip down memory lane. All right, Sam, why don't you lead us off? The best supporting cast. Where do you begin?
I've got Tampa Bay, number one. We all know the wide receivers, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. Then they used their first-round pick to take Emeka in like I said, in the first round. They had the second best yards after catch in the league last year. Like I said, then they had a first-round wide receiver. They also allowed the second lowest pressure rate in the league, so they've got a great offensive line. And this was something that surprised me. Soren, you mentioned, I mean, this became a little bit like a homework assignment, I thought, going through this. Rachaad White tied for the league lead in receiving touchdowns among running backs last year, and Bucky Irving was the top graded receiving running back last year. They're both, assets for a quarterback. The tough part here is they're changing offensive coordinators again, and that's what made me a little bit hesitant to put them number one. But man, the pieces are there. The pieces are really good in Tampa for a quarterback.
I would say that I wonder how much tread is still left on the tire for Mike Evans, who got dinged up, right? Like last year, he barely got to his 1,000 yards. Chris Godwin, same kind of thing. I mean, I think there's a lot to like in Tampa. They're on my list, full disclosure as well. But that's one of the things that I was a little bit nervous about. It is great to invest in draft picks and do all those things, but I was a little bit worried about the durability and the age of some of the players that are there. I do think their running backs are underrated, right? Like, I mean, I think the collection of running backs is really good, because when they called upon Sean Tucker, Q's in the house, by the way, Sean Tucker came in and had a big game when they got all the way down to him. So, and part of that's because of how good the offensive line is and some of the other things they did. So, I like the Bucs, but I couldn't put them at number one. Jeff?
I agree with that. Let me just say real quick, my top four, I could have ranked any of those one through four. And so I don't want to make it seem like I thought the Bucs were a slam dunk, but I just thought they edged out the other three. But I really think that there was a separation for me after number four. I thought the top four, were pretty good groups.
Okay.
Wow. I want to see Sam's list now.
Yeah. Jeff, where'd you go?
I went the Ravens. Lamar Jackson had an MVP season, but you look at what he has around him. That defense struggled early, but they found their footing late. And I think Zach Orr, the second year as a defensive coordinator there, will have more success. I like what they took in the draft with Mike Green and the kid from Georgia, the safety from Georgia, Malachi Starks. I like the idea of Jair Alexander being there if he can stay healthy. And even if he doesn't stay healthy, they still have pretty good corners there. And Marlon Humphrey and Nate Wiggins has some promising future there. And then you're talking about Derrick Henry. You're talking about Zay Flowers. You're talking about two tight ends who are legit, an offensive line that found its groove. I think it's hard not to pick the Ravens, to be honest with you. I think they have everything you'd want to have. And if they can't win a championship with this group, I don't know what they can win it with. So
you went heavy on the defense, like you mentioned a number of defensive.
Yeah, and then go into John Harbaugh and the front office, all the other stuff. But yeah, I just think I'm just on the field what they have around him. They've got a ton of talent.
Sam, reaction to the Ravens?
The Ravens are on my list. They're not part of that 4-team group I mentioned.
Yeah. Sam went heavy on offense, obviously.
Yes.
But defense was not mentioned in his soliloquy about how great they were.
You're right about that, and that's why to give people a little bit behind the scenes, like our group text asked that question, like how much should we rank defense, and I replied and said I would rather everyone just come up with their own where they think, how much they think every aspect of the organization helps assist the quarterback, and I'm not surprised that Jeff ranked defense more than I did there, but I can understand his argument. Like, he made a good argument for why he has the Ravens number one. I like that he went with a different formula because I think it's going to make all three of our lists distinct from one another.
Yeah. I went with, and I don't like that there's a new offensive coordinator, and I don't like the free agent losses on defense, but I am weighted more towards the offensive side of the ball. I went with the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, I think they've got the best offensive line. I think they've got, and I know they lost Malachi
Becton.
Mekhi Becton. I know they lost him at guard, but they've got the best running back. They've got the best offensive line, I think, still without him. I think they've got two top shelf wide receivers. I mean, what don't the Eagles have around Jalen Hurts? They literally have everything, right? They have everything. But they do have a new offensive coordinator, and that didn't work so good 2 years ago, right? They flamed out 2 years ago when they had to make that change. And I think Nick Sirianni can be a ticking time bomb, right? I don't know that he calms the waters when things are going bad. I think he feeds the flame of when things are going downhill. So I don't love it, and that I'm kind of intrigued by what you're saying with the 4 teams, because I was really expecting. First, I went into this all Eagles. It's got to be definitely the Eagles.
I was that way.
And then I was like, well, there's some reason to kind of pull back a little bit from them. But I still ended up putting them number one. Offensive line, receivers, running back. It's a great place to help your quarterback. And then I do think that they should still be good defensively, although I think they take a step back this year. So I went Eagles, number one on my list. Sam, where are you going next?
Yeah, no issue with the Eagles, number one, because I've got the Eagles number two.
Okay.
And 30 minutes ago, I had the Eagles number one on the list for all the reasons you said, Soren. And I just I'm not quite as high on the offensive line as you are. I think their offensive line is really good. I wouldn't call them the best in the league, but yeah, I mean, the Eagles have all sorts of receivers. I guess, and this was an Eric Eager thing, right? That the number 3 wide receiver on your team was often a key to playoffs, and I could see what that is in Tampa. And so really that ended up being my tiebreakers. This team's deeper at wide receiver than I think the Eagles are, and that's what made it the ever so slight edge for me to end up picking Tampa, but no qualms at all with the Eagles. Obviously, they have a dynamic running back as well that Tampa can't match.
Yeah. So you have any qualms with the Eagles, Jeff?
They're number 2 for me. No, they're in the same spot as me. I mean, I started with them when I did the exercise because I felt like, okay, they won the Super Bowl and all the things you guys mentioned. But then, yeah, I think that the Ravens, I trust more of what they have on defense because I know that they didn't lose a whole lot on that side, and they actually gained a few places that help that unit out. But and I think that there is, I mean, you can argue Saquon Barkley had a phenomenal year, but you can argue Derrick Henry was just as amazing in what he did for the Ravens. Zay Flowers is not A.J. Brown, but I think he's better than who's the other guy they have? Devontae Smith. Yeah. And then just having 2 tight ends of that caliber. Mark Andrews it hasn't started declining yet. And I just think Isaiah Likely is going to be a stud. And so for me, that was, again, and it's fine. I hear Sam saying offensively that you focus more on that part of it, but I think what they have defensively and what that could mean to them, if they can do what they did offensively, it's just a more balanced product.
All right. Well, we'll get a new team here when I go with my number 2 team. I have the Minnesota Vikings at number 2. And I think there's firepower galore all over the place. I think they get better on the offensive line. Number 1, they've invested in it, and they get healthy on the offensive line. And I think the head coach is an offensive genius. Listen, I can't wait to see what Sam Darnold is going to be in Seattle because it isn't going to be what he was in Minnesota. And I think a lot of it is going to be, or we're going to see an offensive coordinator leave Seattle after 1 year and head out to be the head coach. Who is the OC in Seattle?
It is, what's the guy? He was in San Francisco, and he was with the Saints last year. His dad was the coach.
Kubiak.
Kubiak.
Yeah.
Clint Kubiak, who was everybody's darling to start the year last year for 3 games down in New Orleans and was the number 1 guy to get a head coach and then ended up being out. I listen, I do think that they are exceptional at what they do offensively. I think you've got, if anybody's carrying the McVay formula, this is, it's the Minnesota Vikings that haven't figured out. And so I just, I don't really have, the offensive line would be the question. That was the one thing that I was going to say, okay, do I have to ding them for that? But in the end, I just think they're too good. So I got the Minnesota Vikings number 2 on my list. Anybody got any hate for the Vikings?
They're number 3 on my list.
Number three on my list too.
Okay. So wow,
their offensive line's not bad. I mean, their offensive line, they did have some interior issues, but they did address those issues as well. I think their offensive line's going to be pretty good this year. Justin Jefferson is as good as it gets. If you want to argue the guy in Cincinnati is better, I won't argue with you, but they're 1A and 1B in whatever order you want to have. Jordan Addison's a good number 2. And
I think he's a solid number 1 for most teams.
Yeah.
When he's called upon, he's been ready to go.
And TJ Hawkinson battled some injuries last year, but that's another weapon. But overall, your point's the best one, Soren, which is Kevin O'Connell obviously is producing a quarterback-friendly environment. I mean, Sam Darnold has succeeded there. Kirk Cousins put up big numbers there. It's a place that if I was a QB, like, say, J.J. McCarthy, I'd be pretty happy that's where I landed.
Yeah, I think you feel pretty good that he is going to end up being, a pretty good in that rookie or in his first year as a starter, I should say, because of the cast he has around him. Of course, you're always in good shape when it comes to your business, when it comes to your parking lot with Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warning. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot.
Big moves, bigger vibes. If you haven't heard, Besame Wellness is now Suede Cannabis. Our colors and name may have changed, but you'll still experience the same great service on top of better deals, longer hours, and faster delivery. Smithville, Liberty, Kansas City, Warrensburg, and North Kansas City. No matter which location you visit, you'll feel right at home. Find the location nearest you and shop online at SuadeCannabis.com. Life should be dope. Let's make it happen. Suede Cannabis.
All right, you guys gave your number 3 because it was the same as my number 2, the Minnesota Vikings. So I guess it's always going to be on me to break new ground. It sounds like, and how this.
Well, Sam already broke it.
Yeah, well, with the Bucs, he's standing alone on the Bucs right now. I'll go Detroit Lions at number 3 on mine. I think number 1, the head coach has proven to be top shelf, despite what his opening press conference was. I'm really surprised, to be honest with you, but you can't deny how good he is at organizing things. His game management is top shelf. You want to go Eric Eager on one. He always talked about how much, he was a fan. Look, 2 great running backs to pound away, an offensive line that did take on some water this year, but I think is still very good. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Tim Patrick. I mean, this is a really good receiving core as well. I think you got to like it. I think Jared Goff is a good quarterback. I don't think he's a great quarterback. I think he's a good quarterback, but he looks like a great quarterback playing for that Detroit Lion team. He looks a lot better than what he did. We know Sean McVay can coach football, but at the end with the Rams, he didn't look like this. And I think a lot of it's because they really know what they're doing around him. So I've got the Detroit Lions. Jeff's Detroit Lions at number 3.
Yeah, they're at number 4 for me. So you're playing one step behind me, but all the things you said, but I'll add to this. To me, this is where the front office and the coaching comes in. I do think Dan Campbell's done a tremendous job finding great coaches. I often remind people that Ben Johnson was not the offensive coordinator of choice when Dan Campbell started that job, and he got rid of Deuce Staley, and Ben Johnson was coaching tight ends. So he saw something in him that allowed him to make that promotion and turn Johnson into a superstar coach. But I think he got great coaching staff. And I think, as you said, they've got a great front office. Brad Holmes, the general manager, does a great job of picking players mid-late rounds. He's from that Rams staff that knows how to find diamonds in the rough. So the Amon-Ra St. Brown pick is a perfect example of that. But how many guys have they brought in, either draft picks or free agents, have bombed there? And it's a very, very short list of guys. So I think that no matter what happens with their coordinator situation, they got a ton of talent. But they also have coaches and a GM who make a ton of smart moves.
Yeah. Lions are an impressive organization from top to bottom. And like I said, Dan Campbell, I got nothing but mad respect for him because the press conference didn't look like it was going to be the kind of success that it's been. But he's been impressive. Where we go for you, Sam?
I've got the Lions 4th. This is what I said. Like, this was the group for me. And you guys have all put the other ones other than the Bucs in your top 3 or 4 as well. And when I said it was difficult to distinguish between these 4, if Ben Johnson hadn't left, I think I'd have the Lions number 1 because of St. Brown, Jameson Williams. You haven't mentioned also Laporta's a really good tight end as well. And I think what stands out about when you mix those 3 guys with their 2 running backs is they have variety everywhere, which allows them to game plan for every type of defense. And by the way, a terrific offensive line as well. Like, this is a really good spot for a quarterback to play. And one more stat I'll mention. I mentioned that the Bucs were second in this stat. The Lions led the NFL in yards after catch last year. Like, for a quarterback to be able to give it to a receiver or a tight end or a running back and just have those guys go make the plays for you, that's a pretty big deal if you're talking about ease of position for a quarterback. So it's a really good spot in Detroit. The only question is, how much does their offense change this year?
Well, and I think, we saw the Eagles. Like, I'll go back to what I said about Philadelphia. We saw them struggle without their coordinator, which, I think this is really big for Dan Campbell as a head coach too, right? Because he's, when you pick your staff and you've kind of been, buddying around with all the assistant coaches out there, you have a pretty good feel for the coaching staff you want to put together. But then by the time you've been a head coach and been successful and you start losing coaches, you're kind of removed from that group of guys. Now you go meet with the head coaches at the head coach meetings, right? At the draft, you've got responsibilities. You're not just out there kind of commingling with, oh, this guy's sharp. Oh, I talked to this guy. I think it's one of the big challenges. We've seen it, even on the college ranks, like Dabo Swinney. He was doing great, and then he started losing his guys, and now he's had his struggles. And, we're going to find out. Is Dan Campbell go the way of Nick Saban, where he had new coordinators all the time and it didn't matter? Or is he going to struggle here for a little bit? So I think that's a big one. I'll close out number 4, a team we've already talked about, the Baltimore Ravens. What's not to like about what the Ravens have? Which I'm kind of surprised.
Sam.
I know. I'm kind of surprised that the Ravens aren't in your top 4. Which I guess I'll ask you. That to me is the more compelling thing here. Why aren't they top for you?
I've got them 5th, so they're not that far off.
But you said there was a drop off from the top 4.
There is a drop off for me.
What's the drop with the Ravens? That's interesting. Why don't they?
Their receivers are below average in the NFL. I could find 16 better receiving cores that I think,
including the tight ends.
Not including the tight ends. You asked me why they weren't top 4 though. Like, their wide receivers to me are not top half of the league. Like, DeAndre Hopkins is going to be their number 2. That's reminiscent of thinking that Odell Beckham had a lot left, which he didn't. That's what reminds me of DeAndre Hopkins. Zay Flowers, I think, is a really solid receiver. I don't think he's a premier number 1 in the league. The only thing I'll push back on what Jeff said, I do think that we're starting to see Mark Andrews decline a little bit. We saw it last year, and he's had a lot of injuries too. And I think it's the way we talk about Travis Kelce's because of age. I think you could have that conversation with Mark Andrews, but say the age and injury combination makes him a little bit older. But again, I don't want to seem like I'm arguing against the Ravens because they are 5th on my list. Like, I really like their supporting cast. And I think the biggest credit the Ravens should get is last year at this time, especially after, a game against the Chiefs, we all said, is the Ravens' offensive line good enough? And their offensive line by the end of the year turned out to be a pretty good group. And, Jeff mentioned Derrick Henry and Barkley. I think people could have argued Henry was better than Barkley last year. Like, he was that good last year. I think just that Barkley gives the Eagles more in the receiving game than Henry does with the Ravens.
Yeah, I think the receivers are better than you're giving them credit for. I think Zay Flowers. Rashad Bateman is kind of a diet Chris Carter. I always go to Chris Carter as like the great move the chains and goal line type of guy, but not the explosive big play guy. And I think Bateman's kind of grown into that role. I mean, he was really good. He had a stretch where he was getting a touchdown every week. But I think you're undervaluing Zay Flowers, and I think there's still room for growth.
I think he's really good. I mean, it's just
I have him 4, you have him 5. We obviously don't think too far apart on it. But I'm a bigger proponent of Zay Flowers. Jeff, who's number 5 on your list?
Rams, Matthew Stafford, and the crew they put around him with Davante Adams going over there, replacing a old aging and beat up Cooper Kupp. Obviously, Puka Nacua is a Pro Bowl, All-Pro level receiver when he's healthy. Kyron Williams is the most underrated back in football for my money. I mean, this is a guy who's put up 1,200 yard seasons, and obviously, the coaching staff is phenomenal. I think Sean McVay is a top 3 coach in my mind. And then defensively, their front 7, what they've been able to do in rebuilding that team around some really savvy draft picks in the front 7 with Jared Verse and Byron Young and all those guys. I mean, they've got one of the most talented front 7s in the NFL. And most of those guys are just coming off their first or second year. And so I look at that, all those factors as helping them be. Matthew Stafford needs all this stuff to get back to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I don't hate on the Rams. You're going to hear them pretty quick from me. Sam, you got any blowback on the Rams?
I thought that when I went through this exercise, like before I started it, that I'd have the Rams on a pretty decent spot on my list. And then I guess going through the history of like their offense, it surprised me how much their offense has struggled over the last 5 years. Like
injuries.
They have had injuries. Absolutely. They've had injuries. Last year was the offensive line. And
the back, but just real quick, sorry to interrupt you, Sam, but the guys who back up the starters, that's part of the equation as well. And they've clearly, had some problems. Plus they have players.
Yeah. And I guess, 15th in yards last year, 7th year before, 32nd, 9th, 11. Like it's been like 8 years since Sean McVay had a top 5 offense. That surprised me. I'm just saying that stat surprised me when I looked it up. Jeff, it's not like Jeff's got a number 1, and we're not that far off on where we have the Rams. It's just part of this. I mentioned this was a little bit of a homework exercise, I think, for a lot of us to learn a little bit more about the last 5-6 years for some of these teams, and some of their offensive numbers surprised me.
I would agree, but I think, like we go like, well, they have Cooper Kupp, and they have, we're talking about 5th and 6th round guys that they're making look like absolute stars.
Yep.
Right? So whether that goes to Matt Stafford or that goes to Sean McVay, we're talking about the supporting cast around the cornerback. I think a lot of it goes to McVay.
Yeah.
They do seem to be able to, and I think this is one of the things that's kind of dinging Andy Reid. We haven't mentioned Andy Reid here, right? Like nobody said the Chiefs yet on this list, but I think it's one of the things that I think Andy Reid, like all of that Commanders group that was with Mike Shanahan, they've all carried forward the ability to run the ball and seemingly with anybody and run it effectively. And because there are some metrics out there that say Kyron Williams isn't even that good, right? But he scores a touchdown every game.
Yep.
So I do think McVay is doing a lot of the lifting for me.
Yeah.
And I have the Rams coming up soon, not here at 5, but I'm
the thing I would ask Jeff, because he prioritized defense. The thing I probably weighted more heavily than I anticipated was offensive line play. Like if you're a quarterback, what's your offensive line play? That's a real concern, I think, in LA was what is the protection? Last year was atrocious. And Jeff's right. They had injuries on the offensive line too, but they had pretty bad offensive line play and lost. Jonah Jackson, I think, was the most overvalued player on the market this free agency, but they did lose him. Like he is a solid player who they lost as well. I'm concerned about the offensive line in front of Matt Stafford.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I've got at number 5 the Tampa Bay Bucks.
There we go.
I do think that it's a really good group. It's a really deep group of receivers. It's a deep group of running backs. They do lose their offensive coordinator. That's an issue for me. But if all their guys are healthy, that's a really good group, right? We covered them to start. They were our lead story with Sam firing out the Bucks. So we've covered a lot of it. But I do think that, and that's a little surprising. I don't think most people in the NFL, we know that's why Tom Brady went down there. I will reiterate, I do worry about the age and the tread on the tire with some of the receivers. I think that's, you're right. Mark Andrews is in decline. Mike Evans is in decline, as well. Chris Godwin, I think, is in decline a little bit. So, but I've got them. I do like what they've got going on there. I've got them at number 5. And we'll see if, where things go. This year, I think it's probably a big year for that group to see what they ultimately end up being. If you are hungry, you can see your way to Whataburger. Your favorites are back, Kansas City, now for a limited time at all your KC Whataburger locations. Get the Pico de Gallo burger, 2 large beef patties, 2 slices of pepper jack cheese, Pico de Gallo, and creamy cilantro lime. How about the sweet and spicy bacon burger? 2 large beef patties, American and Monterey Jack cheese, bacon, grilled onions, and topped with sweet and spicy pepper sauce. Or grab the patty melt. Even the honey barbecue chicken strip sandwich. They're all perfect with the Whataburger banana pudding shake. Remember, Whataburger's open 24 hours a day. Breakfast served 11 p. to 11 a. And don't forget, you can get all your Whataburger favorites and more by downloading the Whataburger app with the QR code. Whataburger, proud sponsor of the Red, Gold, and Bold. Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, serving KC for more than 40 years, voted Kansas City's #1 accident lawyers, helping people with serious injuries from car accidents, work accidents, falls, and other personal injuries. Northland Injury Law doesn't get paid unless they get money for their client. Don't wait, get compensated now. If you have a case, text HURT to 22222. That's HURT to 22222, or call 816-400-HURT. That's 816-400-4878. The choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not be based solely upon advertisements. All right, that brings us now to number 6 for you, Sam. Who's the 6th best supporting cast?
I've got the 49ers 6th, and Kyle Shanahan's carrying a lot of the load here. But again, when you go back through this exercise, like the 49ers offense and yards their last 4 seasons have been 4th, 2nd, 5th, and 7th, with Brock Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo playing quarterback. Like, their offense isn't top 5 every year because of their quarterback play. And I'm not saying those quarterbacks have been terrible, but Jimmy G hasn't gotten a starting job since. Brock Purdy would, but I don't think he's an upper half of the league quarterback. I just think it's obviously the environment is driving their success offensively. And to me, that's the start, first and foremost, is the scheme. But they've got good protection. I mean, anytime you've got the best left tackle in the league, that's a lot of help for a quarterback. Well, I meant Jalen Moore.
Oh, okay.
Trent Williams, to be clear. But I mean, George Kittle had a really sneaky good year last year. He led tight ends in yards per game, still had 8 touchdowns. Christian McCaffrey's another when he plays guy. It'll be interesting what kind of year Brandon Ayuk has. But overall, I just think this is a good spot for a quarterback.
I can't believe, like, when Isaac Guerrero can have a big day, it speaks to, like, this is that group, one of the group of guys that were there in Washington with the Commanders. They can run the ball with anybody. And I think there was a feeling, who was the guy who stepped in last year? Mason?
Jordan Mason.
Jordan Mason.
But they've had Elijah Mitchell. Right? To your point, friend, they've had Elijah Mitchell have 900 yards. Raheem Mostert had been cut a few times before they had him. They've never had a great quarterback or running back, like on paper, right?
Yeah, but they always run the ball and run the ball effectively. Yeah. And I think it's because they're and I think it's one of the more underrated things. I think, Bill Snyder's group, his offensive group with the K-State Wildcats, was underrated. Like, you think of offensive coordinators, everybody thinks, Mike Martz and throwing the ball on every down, that's how you do it. But there's a lot that goes into coordinating a great run game. And a great run game does take off pressure from your, from everybody, I think, really on the offensive side. And he can flat out coordinate a run game. And that allows you to survive with guys like Brock Purdy. I don't know what I really thought the 49ers might be the team that said, we'll just turn and burn at quarterback.
Yeah.
Right?
And trade. Like, the turn and burn in that sense, under like Jimmy G, man, you could trade and get something for him.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that might be what they would do. But they're going to put a bunch of money in Brock Purdy. I think that ultimately will be a problem. Here's the reason why they were in my top 7 and finished outside. Brandon Ayuk is coming off injuries. Ricky Pearsall, we don't know what he is. Gone is Deebo Samuel, even though we didn't know when he was going to play. You are right. George Kittle had a good year and played. Finally, ask fantasy football players for the first time in several years. They got some stability. Trent Williams seems to limp off in almost every game and be on the injury report every game. I back up everything you say. I just think they're old and beaten to hell, and I don't know why we would think they would be healthy. And so I think if they're healthy, they're top 4. They should be in your top 4. I just don't see any reason to believe that they're going to be healthy. So they're in my others, receiving boats group for me.
Yeah, and I to be honest, I don't disagree with anything you said. And that's why I led with, when I picked the 49ers, that Kyle Shanahan's carrying the load there. It's just because I've looked at their group and said, this quarterback and this running back combination has been top 5. 4 straight years they've been in the top 7, like 4th, 2nd, 5th, and 7th. And I was just like, I can't figure out how this talent has gotten to this spot. And it's just, they've got a good scheme. And so that's why I think it's just a good spot for a quarterback, is because of that.
I'd be curious how much Sam's list would change if he weighted defensive prowess more. You might have a whole different list. Because for me, the Niners didn't make my list because that's because of the injuries, but because the defense has taken a huge hit. They've lost a ton of people over there.
Yeah.
And it is, to Jeff, your point, I mean, getting the ball back to your guy or maybe giving him some short fields makes everything a lot easier.
No. There hasn't been a quarterback win a championship without a good defense yet, and it ain't going to happen this year.
I will push back a little bit. There are a couple.
Who's the one?
Peyton Manning with the Colts. I mean, by statistic rankings,
the year they won, they weren't that great offensively.
The Colts,
that was one of their worst offensive team. That was one of their worst offensive years when they won it.
They sucked defensively because they were 28th in the NFL.
Yeah, but Bob Sanders came back, and what they do in the playoffs.
I know that's the the magic of Bob Sanders.
Yeah.
Oh boy, if they just had Bob Sanders, they'd have been number 2 in the NFL.
Well, they were in the playoffs that year defensively.
Yeah. It's they were great in the playoffs.
They were second in points and third in yards when they won the Super Bowl.
Nah, not the.
No, I'm talking offensively. They were second.
Oh yeah,
second in points and third in yards. They had a pretty good offense.
What they do in the playoffs, still offensively, is what I'm saying.
The Colts, I'd have to go
their
back.
offense was not that explosive in the playoffs.
Oh, they played They played Herm Edwards of the Chiefs, man. They're gonna beat you up no matter what. That Chiefs team that year was salty. No, it was not.
Yeah, they 23-8 against the Chiefs, 15-6 against the Ravens. That was a game they really didn't move anything. The other 3 games, they had at least 430 yards of offense. All 3 games. The other 3 games.
Low totals in there. Jeff, who do you got at 6?
Commanders.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it was back and forth between my last team and them, but I went with just speculation here with, you add Deebo Samuel to a receiving core that already has, I think, a pretty underrated receiver in Terry McLaurin. I think Zach Ertz still showed he can do some things for you offensively, though he's getting up there in age. Bringing over Laramie Tunsil, one of the best left tackles in football, helps to solidify their offensive line. I think their running backs, Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler, I think they're underrated as well. I mean, I think they can do some things if you give them opportunities and good blocking. And I think their defense, they don't have a pass rusher. They'd be higher if they had a more consistent pass rusher. They'll miss Dante Fowler, but I like bringing over Marshawn Lattimore in that trade last year in the secondary. I think Bobby Wagner can still play. And I like the veterans they brought in. They've got some guys who last year who were on 1-year deals, who were really good leadership type, locker room type guys. And so I think that fits what you want to have around a young quarterback in Jane Daniels. And I think Dan Quinn can coach him up. And so that to me is they've shown a lot in a very short time. So I like that supporting cast a lot.
What's to like about the Commanders and not the Bucs?
Well, the Bucs are on my list. They're actually a better defense, to be honest with you.
Okay.
And the injuries. The injuries on the Bucs do worry me. Godwin coming back from his injury is a big deal. And defensively, they were not good last year defensively. They still got issues in their secondary.
But
at corner.
The Bucs, I mean, the Commanders weren't good off defensively either, were they? I just you've got Deebo Samuel on your list, but you're worried about the injuries for the Bucs.
He finished the year, didn't he?
They did add a lot in free agency on the defensive side of the ball, trying to add.
They're putting a lot on Hassan Reddick. They're hoping he becomes something for them, but they were horrible last year, and some of that was injuries. But they just got some guys. Levante David's getting up there in age. You'd have a hard time naming 4 players on their defense right now.
But what you're saying by this exercise is you think if you switch
I'm saying the Commanders have a better defense than the Bucs.
Like you're saying, if Daniels was on the Bucs instead, you wouldn't prefer that team to the Commanders with Daniels. I prefer JT Daniels in the Bucs than I would JT Daniels in the Commanders. I guess is what I'm saying.
Oh,
Jaden Daniels. Yeah,
I'm not looking at it that way. No, I'm looking at the totality of it. I think if you look at it just on offense, the Bucs have some good weapons, but do I think Bucky Irving and Rashad White are infinitely better than Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler? I don't think that. Do I think that?
Oh, I do.
I think Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel are probably at this stage, because they're younger players, are probably a better combination than Mike Evans and an injured Chris Godwin.
Now, and the number 1 pick. And
we don't know what he's going to be. He could suck.
Well, he could.
You know?
He could be good. He could be good,
Yeah.
right?
He could be, but he could suck. We don't know. There's a lot of guys who
He
suck.
could.
Well, top picks.
Well, one of those guys who sucks right now is Debo. It's been a minute since Debo was good.
I do like Debo Samuel when he plays, right? And I think Terry McLaurin is underrated, so I agree with that. I think the receivers, if Debo Samuel plays, the reason that I looked long and hard at him, they didn't make it for me because I think Laramie Tunsil's on the downslope. I think he's an improvement, but on the downslope. But if they get better offensive line play, I do agree the production from the Bucs has been really good, but from the Bucs running backs, but the pedigree of the players is not like these are not former top 5 picks, and so I do wonder a little bit how much the scheme and everything along those lines went. But I considered Washington pretty hard, right, on Washington being there. But in the end, they didn't make the cut for me. But I do see if Debo Samuel's healthy, and I think with a quarterback that's a run threat, and then Debo Samuel's coming around on, is he going to loop around? If he's healthy, and when he adds the threat of the run from the wide receiver position, that was a big part of, like, you talk about those rushing offenses from Kyle Shanahan. I mean, Debo Samuel's right there in the middle of it. I mean, he is. I always thought it'd be great to see him with Andy Reid. I don't know now, because I think Kyle Shanahan got everything out of him you could, and that's my fear for Washington, is that he squeezed everything out of him you could, and there's nothing left in the tank. But if he's Debo Samuel in his prime, I think that is a big effort. If Laramie Tunsil bounces back and plays, and even what he was last year is good, is an improvement for them. I just don't know that he's top shelf anymore. And we don't need to spend too much time on my number 6, because I have the Rams, who we have talked about. McVay, I think, is the part that really carries a lot of the weight for me. But I do think their offensive line has a chance to be solid. I do think Puka Nacua is great. And then you add Devontae Adams to the mix. And I know he may not be prime Devontae Adams, but I think with Matt Stafford's going to find him, and he's going to have, if he's healthy, he'll have a bounce back year. And I think that has a chance to take them up a notch. Number 7, Sam, where do you go?
I've got the Rams 7th. So not much more to add. I mean, I guess maybe when I did this exercise, I thought I'd have 7 teams that wowed me more than look, these are all good teams that we picked, all good supporting cast that we picked. I thought it would be easier to find 7. Then I'm like, man, what a great supporting cast. And I do think one of the lessons of the exercise is 90% of NFL teams have pretty glaring weaknesses, and that's the beauty of the league, right? I mean, that's why this is difficult.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great point, because you do look at it and be like, oh, if that guy goes down, oh, what about there? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, with the Rams, you're like, hey, Devontae Adams is 33 years old. He's the number 2 wide receiver. They're relying on a rookie as a tight end. And their offensive line is a question. But here I am, still ranking them 7th.
Yeah. It's not that they're without flaws. They're just 7th best. Right?
Yeah.
That's the point.
But didn't you anticipate that maybe more teams would have fewer flaws when you guys went through this exercise?
No, I felt like it was going to be tough to figure out, because you're going to start with the playoff teams, right? You're not starting with some team that didn't make the playoffs.
I don't know that I'm my answer to you would be no, but I understand the sentiment, and my reason for no is that I think that's why the quarterback means so much.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because I think it's really, really hard. I think the 49ers did everything you could do without having the great quarterback, and they almost won 2 Super Bowls. And maybe if Patrick Mahomes isn't there, maybe he's the only guy that could have stopped them from winning 2 Super Bowls. Maybe Jimmy Garoppolo is still their starting quarterback for them. Maybe they get 1 and they never get to Brock.
I think Chris Jones is the guy who stopped from winning.
He contributed. The quarterback's the main part. I'm not going to.
He probably stopped 4 touchdown passes in 2 Super Bowls by himself.
Chris Jones played a big role, but he wasn't. They didn't shut him out. So there had to be points.
I guess let me put it this way: there's a team on here that I think if you didn't go through the exercise and do the full depth of the homework, I thought I'd be the only guy who didn't have a team listed on here as the top supporting cast for a quarterback, because I think there's a lot of people. The Bengals. I think a lot of people would say Bengals have the best 1-2 wide receiver in football. Do you guys have them on number 7, by the way?
No. I do.
You don't You do?
I do.
I don't.
I thought that you guys had the Bengals in the top 5, and I'd be sitting here saying, well, when you do your homework on it, here's why I didn't have. They had the 32nd best pass block win rate in the league last year, dead last in the NFL, and did very little to address that. They don't have a great tight end. They've got a tight end who's bounced around the league, basically been a number 2 tight end. They have him as their number 1. I don't like their running backs at all. They're somehow bringing it back with Chase Brown and Zach Moss as their running backs next year. Samaje Perine, like. I love those two wide receivers.
Chase Brown put almost 1,000. Chase Brown is, to me, an underrated part. Chase Brown is why they got to 7.
See, but everyone's expecting the Bengals to pass, right? I mean, you gotta bracket this guy, you gotta double this guy. Like,
yeah, agreed. But I mean, that's all part of the cast. And when you do all that, then he does beat you. I mean, he is a problem. I think. Listen, I'm not going to argue the Bengals. I kicked around about literally 5 teams in here, maybe even 6. For this, I mean, I have, like you said, you have a drop off. The drop off is at 7. Like, I would rather have done 6 of these and not have to put the Bengals on here. And I'll be honest with you, there's a team I maybe should have put on here, and I'll tell you why I didn't here in a minute when I hear their name. I'm gonna hear their name at some point. But the part of the hope for me, part of the thought process for me is I do think there is upside with Demarius Mims to make things better on the offensive line with the Bengals. I'm higher on the coach than others in Zach Taylor. I don't. Some people are acting like he's a boob. I also think Mike Gesicki is really good. I wanted Kansas City to sign him. I think he most of his time he was down there when the quarterback was hurt all the time, and now he played with Joe Burrow and he put up numbers. And I don't think that's a mistake. I don't think that's a coincidence. So
you just ignore defense too with this pick.
Largely.
I'm not even care.
Largely, I did because I think I think Jamar Chase is that good. Like I think,
but offense wasn't their problem last year. I mean, right? It was a lot of mistakes, but defensively they were a train wreck.
Yeah, I agree. And they fired the defensive coordinator.
Oh,
so I mean, I don't think it's going to get worse.
They hired a college guy.
I mean, I don't know. I can't tell you I'm qualified to say the guy sucks or doesn't.
Yeah.
I know they decided the last guy did. I think it was probably time for a change. Look, I will give
I think that's an assist for the quarterback to win an MVP award because he's going to have to put up 5,000 yards.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he's my pick right now.
But I do think I do think that they will. I also think there's just a bounce back. Like, I don't think they were as bad as they looked last year. Right. I think there was time, but I'll say this, I'll tell you what could make this just look stupid. They're fighting with Trey Hendrickson. Either trade him, you should have traded him before the draft. If you didn't want to pay the guy, then trade him. So like part of the supporting cast, we probably should be like, hey, their front office creates fights that don't need to be had. The front office could have paid Jamar Chase last year and saved themselves a lot of money this year. I mean, they do a lot of dumb things. There's no way around it, but I think Jamar Chase is spectacular. I think Chase Brown is underrated. I think T. Higgins is very good. I think Gesicki is good. I think there's upside on the offensive line, and I'm counting on at least mild improvement from the defense. So I've got the Bengals at number 7, and you had the Rams, Sam. Right, so that leaves Jeff's number 7.
Sam's Bucks. Yeah, they snuck it at the end there with the for all the reasons that have been mentioned so far. I mean, I think that I got a lot of respect for Mike Evans and the guys who play down there. I think Bucky Irving was a great find. Their offensive line, I keep saying this about a lot of people, but it's probably the least well-known great offensive line in football.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why they end up winning like 9 games and fighting to win that division every year.
That quarterback, yeah.
He's the problem, right? Yeah, I mean, but I think if you guys open up the defense, you'd be like, nah, I can't put the Bucs on here that high up. They should be on the list because of that talent on offense, but they're just not a complete team to me.
All right, who is the toughest cut? Right, that's all 7. Who is your toughest cut?
I cut it off. I thought 7 was a good number. Actually, I thought.
You were the one who suggested 7, so I wonder, did you have your list?
No, I said 5, 7, or 10, and then it was just all right, let's just get this moving. But it wound up to where I thought 4 was a clear cut, then 5, 6, 7. Like if we were doing tiers, my top 4 in a tier, my 5, 6, 7 are in a second tier.
Okay. But you didn't have a toughest cut. You didn't have somebody who
I ranked 8. I ranked 8 through
right, but no one was
11.
like ooh, or did you have somebody that was up there that you ended up bouncing that you thought was gonna be okay.
I didn't.
How about you, Jeff?
I flirted with the Bills and the Chiefs. I mean, they were 8 and 9 for me, and then the Broncos were 10. But the Broncos because of the elite defense. But with the Chiefs and the Bills, they were very similar supporting cast. I mean, they've got strengths in certain areas and deficiencies in other areas. The Bills ultimately didn't make it because their receivers, the strength of their receivers, and their defensive line play. The pass rush isn't that strong. But the offensive line, to me, was hard to ignore with them. I like their running backs a lot. I think James Cook is a special talent. We'll see what happens with his contract. And I think he's a big part. And I like Joe Brady, their OC, a lot. I think he's figured out, he's unlocked a part of Josh Allen that made him an MVP player. And with the Chiefs, the Chiefs is just kind of the wild card. You just don't know what is Chris Jones going to be, what's Travis Kelce going to be, what's Rashee Rice going to be coming back from injury, what's the backfield look like. So the
top 5 defenses the last 2 years, I thought you'd be all over them.
That got him in the conversation.
Elite defense.
Start looking around. Yeah, it wasn't elite enough. Yeah, if they had the 23 defense, yeah, I'd be all about it. But got 24 defense with Chris Jones and 5 sacks. So,
all right,
I had the Chiefs 8, and like I said, there was a cutoff for me, but I would have ranked them 8th. If you are convinced that Josh Simmons is going to be the real deal, you should rank the Chiefs in the top 5.
That's where I was headed, and they're the ones that I had up there. I had the 49ers and the Chiefs. I had the 49ers up there, and I had the Chiefs that I was trying to find a way. But it was like I was basically going to have to say that Josh Simmons is going to be good. And I don't know that. And I heard all these great things about Kingsley Suamataia last year. Now it's Travis and Jason Kelce on their podcast saying that Josh Simmons is Trent Williams-like. If he's Trent Williams, yeah.
Number 1, rank them first.
I think they're 2 or 3 because, if you put defense in there, I think they're going to be good on defense. And I think they solved the biggest issue they've got at left tackle. If the receivers are healthy, there's a lot to like right there.
Well, and the
tight end, still a good tight end.
Yeah, Bucker helps them a lot too.
The Chiefs did not have that group of wide receivers play a single snap together last year with Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, and Rashee Rice. For different reasons, there's reasons to question whether or not those 3 can make it through 17 games this year, whether it's missing the start of a season, middle, end, whatever it might be. The thing that prevented me from wanting to rank the Chiefs was they have the best quarterback in football, and yet their offense has been middle of the pack the last 2 years. And so that's what made it difficult for me to rank them in the top 7. If you have a top 7 supporting cast with Patrick Mahomes, you should be the clear-cut best offense in the league.
Or the quarterback should be dropped down our quarterback list.
Exactly. Yeah, it's got to be one or the other, right? You can't have the
coach. I think it's 3-pronged.
Yeah. Like you can't have that team ranked as your top 7 supporting cast and say, oh, and they have the best quarterback and they have the best head coach. And it's like they better have the best offense in the league by quite a bit then.
Yes. I think you get around to something I've said a number of times on these podcasts. I think there's pressure on Andy Reid. Not pressure like he's going to get fired or not pressure like he's not going to be considered one of the greats of all time. But, I think, if Josh Simmons is the left tackle and he fits the bill, there's no reason for this offense not to hum. There's no reason, right?
There's other reasons. But
what are they?
Let's see. The receivers. We don't know. Is Rashee Rice going to be Rashee Rice that we saw at the start of last year? Is he going to be compromised by coming off a major knee injury? Is Xavier Worthy going to make that jump? Is Hollywood Brown going to be what we think he was supposed to be?
If Xavier Worthy,
you could have 4 guys that have all got questions about them.
Yeah, and that's fair. And maybe I'm seeing it through red and gold glasses. That's fair. Can Hollywood? The health on everybody is real. If they're healthy, then it comes down to if they're playing. To your point, is Rashee Rice playing but not as explosive? The early returns are that he's back, right, Sam? That's the word.
Yeah, and he looks it too. He's not wearing a brace when he's out there, but we'll see. Padless practice.
Being covered by Nazi Johnson.
Yeah, well, it's padless practice for a guy who thrives on his after catch contact plays, and that's going to be the question. I would say that I would predict he's going to be the Rashee Rice of old, but not be certain of it.
Yeah, I would predict that as well. I would predict an improvement from Xavier Worthy. Now, look, if Xavier Worthy's catching the ball and his second step is out of bounds again. Like all that crap I'm expecting to be gone. Like he did miss OTAs and minicamp last year because of whatever injury he had going on. He's not missing it this year. It's his second camp. He's been around. He knows the offense. This should be a clear step forward for him. And if it's not, then they have more McCole Hardman than they do, Devonta Smith or Deshaun Jackson. I mean, you're hoping you have Deshaun Jackson. If he's 600-ish again this year, you have McCole Hardman, right? And that'll be a big statement.
Can I tell you the one team that surprised me that I was at least like considering? I just want to get what you guys think of it. No, I think the Falcons should have been considered. The Bears surprised me that I was.
The Bears are number 11 on my list.
I was at least. They ended up 10th on my list, but I was just surprised that I was considering them. But their offensive line was bad last year. They got 3 new offensive linemen this year. They still have a Dunze and DJ Moore and Komet. And then their first 2 picks off the board were Colston Level and Luther Burden. And by far the biggest change is head coach. They go from a defensive-minded head coach to one of the better offensive minds in the game. And so I was considering the Bears longer than I thought before just checking them off the list.
A lot of big names,
So you went 10 deep, right, Jeff? That's you had 8, 9, and 10. And what did you have?
I had 12. I had Chiefs, Bills, and the thing that Jeff didn't mention about the Bills, like the Bills' pass protection was terrific last year. League low sack rate. Now a lot of that's Josh Allen, but Dawkins is terrific at left tackle. I just think when you have the left tackle figured out. Yeah, Chiefs, Bills, Bears, Bengals, and then I had the Broncos 12th as well. Sean Payton is your play caller, and I've mentioned the offensive line for a lot of these teams. I said it before that I weighted heavily. They had the best run blocking and best pass blocking unit in the league, according to ESPN's rankings last year, analytical rankings. So that's a pretty good spot for a quarterback too.
For the record, 8 Chiefs, 9 Falcons, 10 Niners, 11 Bears, 12 Broncos. That was mine. With the Packers being another one that I considered, but I was like, I'm only going to go 5 extra. So they were the ones that got cut. So there it is. Not bad. We'll see if it plays out that way this year. Listen, you can see if you need help on your parking lot. Businesses, listen, don't lose time, don't lose money with a parking lot that has accidents going on. Liability problems are problems for your entire business. With free consultations, no commissions, and in-house crews. Every project coming with a written warranty. GAN Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer, helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find them online at GANAsphalt.com. One contractor, all things parking lots. Our friends at Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, serving KC for more than 40 years. If you've been hurt in an accident, text HURT to 22222. That's HURT to 22222, or call 816-400-HURT. If you haven't heard, Best Me Wellness is now Suede Cannabis. Suede Cannabis, find the location nearest you and shop online at suedecannabis.com. And, of course, our friends at Whataburger. Open 24 hours a day. Now, for a limited time, get the Pico de Gallo burger, the sweet and spicy bacon burger, the patty melt, or even the honey barbecue chicken strip sandwich. Whataburger has got you covered. Breakfast, 11P to 11A. Wash it all down with the banana pudding shake at your neighborhood Whataburger. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.